So if you ever cannot,
Let's do that.
if you can ever not hear me, raise your hand, yell at me because I have hearing to say, and I am empathetic. When, this is a very, an audience, as I got ready to prepare this, causes a little trepidation. And you notice, everyone knows you're supposed to know your audience, right? And many times I've gotten up at Lockheed to brief things, and one time I was briefing someone and I was on a roll. I was convincing them, you could see them, customers were getting on the edge of their seat, they were ready to throw money at the company and everything. And I'm briefing Dr. So-and-so, brief this, and here's the equation, and this is how we're gonna work it. It's gonna be great, and so forth. And meeting broke up. It was a big success. My boss is clapping me on my back. Program manager. And then this guy comes up and he goes, that's a very good, interesting take on that equation. I said, yeah. He says, I'm Professor Who's It. That's not what I said. So fortunately, he didn't say that in the middle of the pitch. Later on, I was briefing Undersecretary of Defense Program of Analysis, and I knew he was in the audience. But my material was going to be extremely critical of PA&E. And so I approached him beforehand and said, I'm going to say some nasty things about PA&E because of the program, the F-16. And he said, go for it. So one of the things I learned as a junior officer was you got to tell the general or the admiral right up front, this is going to be a decision brief. This is an information brief. And I'm telling you all, this is an entertainment brief. Okay? There's nothing to be learned. None of this stuff is on the final. Okay?
Yes,
Finally, right? Okay. So I had Jim put this up early so that everybody can look at these pictures because they capture where the brief is going to go. We started World War II with this radar. And this is now an obsolete radar, right? Similarly, we started World War II with the French 75 as the main battery in direct support artillery. Now we're using this thing. And please, use it all you want. We know how to make more missiles, and that money comes into my retirement. Okay? This is one of the most effective signal systems by very many measures of merit, extremely secure, very high reliability, bandwidth, not so much. 2 bits a minute, 3 if you can get a good operator. We moved on to satellites, right? So how did all of that occur? Because it wasn't that long ago. There are people here, well, in the Metroplex at least, hopefully none in this room, who were there for World War II. I just missed it. Right? How did we get from this stuff to this stuff? And what does it really mean in this sense of the information war? So the question that I was just asked is, what the hell is a boffin? And I was surprised when that was asked, because Jim says, what are you going to talk about? And he knew what we were going to talk about because he and Tom McGinnis over here, we were jabber-jawing at lunch one day, and I got on a roll, and Tom turned to Jim and says, there's your pitch. There's your briefer right there.
I didn't do that.
You knew that, you weren't there. Okay? So basically, a boffin is what they call a nerd or a geek. With much more affection. Okay? That was English slang. And of course, we had this Englishman over here who was a boffin of his own, in his own right, back in World War I, when he was a fairly young man. He was the First Lord of the Admiralty. Right? Everybody remembers that, right? Okay, you've heard of it. All right. He decides that the Royal Navy, and I'm sure he pleased a lot of admirals, needed an air wing in it. Joseph?
Right there? Yeah.
Thanks. So he went ahead and put it because Churchill was always predisposed to do experimentation and so forth. As the war went on, as you all know, the Royal Navy invented, we got any tankers in the room? Is this when I raise my hand like this, I'm looking for the amens and, oh yeah, me too. This is part of the entertainment package. All right.
Yeah.
Invented the land ship, as they called it. Eventually, people called it by its code name, a tank. All right. In the middle of the Battle of Britain, Churchill labeled the electronics warfare give and take that was going on between Britain and England the Wizard War as part of this Boffins. And what we've got to see here is that Boffins were on every side. And there's, depends on how you count, 2 sides, 4 sides, or 6 sides in the World War II. Just depends on how you want to look at it. But every one of them had their Boffins. And they were everywhere. They were involved in everything. The one that comes most to mind, of course, is production. As we know, every country was just throwing the production out here. This is the Willow Run bomber plant up in Detroit, right? You go see this picture. B-24 is coming out every 60 seconds. Boom, 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 another B-24.
Yeah.
Oops, that was not the button to push, Chappell. There, the undo button. Literally, put my finger on the right button. Boffins in Germany, coming up with the jet, the ME-262, coming up with rocket science. Okay. Both England and the United States produced jets in World War II. Everybody had their fingers in the rocket business. Ahead of the Germans, this happens to be a German radar, and the electronic warfare that was involved in it. That was the real Wizards War. That was where the Boffins were going on. And then, of course, we had cryptography. You all remember who's seen the Imitation Game about Alan Turing and so forth, right? This is the American version of a bomb that Turing that's in that movie. It was called Colossus, okay? One of the very first big computers in the United States. And of course, I used a computer, as you can see, to build this brief. We went from there to building this brief. And let me tell you, this brief was hard to put together. I'm an old fart. I have a hard time getting up and down that ladder so many times. What else? What am I missing up here?
There's just.
Joey, that wasn't it. Come on, guys. Gals, let's go.
Yeah, it's a good shot.
What's missing? There's a big one.
Nuclear weapons.
Atomic weapons, right? Special weapons.
Oh,
Right?
good.
That's the obvious one. But what we have is more. Medicine. Boffins and medicine. World War II is the first war where U.S. non-battle casualties were finally exceeded. Did not finally, let me say it the way I want to say it, it's more positive. The first war where non-battle casualties were lower than battle casualties. Usually we lose more people to disease and accidents and so forth. Finally, we got some of that under control. Psychology, which I'm going to touch on later, I hope to have time. Meteorology, extremely important. Probably get to touch on that too, but extremely important in World War II. Because why? Aviation was everywhere. Meteorology became important. Oceanography and the dirty tricks departments. Okay, every country had some of that special ops action going on. These operators in here, anybody ever played with one? Nobody ever took someone in a submarine or let them jump out of their too small. Okay? We're going to look at one campaign as the case study. This talk was coalescing in my brain, I said, we'll do 3 case studies. We'll talk about the air war, we'll talk about this, and we'll talk about what I got here. Jim had told me that when I had 4 hours to talk. Later on, I said, we only have 1 hour, so I cut it down to 1 case study. Now he says I got 30 minutes. All right. We're going to talk as a case study about the Battle of the Atlantic. If you took an opportunity to glance at those books,
Oh,
you can see that why I picked the ones we got there. Battle of Atlantic is, to my view, the most important battle in the campaign in the war. Russia and Germany going at it is pretty important, okay? I mean, let's face it, that was a big thing. But without them winning the Battle of the Atlantic War could not have been won. The bomber war required fighters, and they couldn't fly over in those days. And even if they could, no pilot ever generated a story. You need troops, you need parts, you need a lot of fuel, and none of this stuff grows in England naturally. Well, crew members, but they got their own Air Force to feed. Okay? So the big two, this was before, this is Acadia, got together and then worked out what was going to happen. That was in 1941. By that time, the Axis and the Allies at that point was just Britain, were fighting the battle for the North Atlantic. Admiral Durlance had looked at the battle and envisioned it in one sense, and it's called the Tonnage War. So the Tonnage War, this is the way, I mean, Durlance drove submarines in World War I. He had 20 years to figure out how to do it right this time. And they came that close to doing it right the first time. And he got to thinking about it, and he says, it doesn't matter where I sink a ship, as long as I sink them. Because he looked at the globe, and he looked at England in particular, and France's merchant marine, and said,
Oh,
those guys are busy. All those trips, those are necessary for the countries to survive, to get resources from their colonies. He's still thinking of colonies, but even if it's just trade, it doesn't matter. They have to have those ships moving around. And that means so many tons per day are getting delivered in various places. And if I can shrink that merchant fleet down to where that breaks down, we win. So fundamentally, he didn't care whether you sink them. Just get out there and sink them, and we'll do enough. Britain, on the other hand, was looking at it from a different perspective. They were looking at it from the island perspective of, if it doesn't show up here and this pier, we lose. It doesn't really matter to me. It's important, but it's not on the same level. Cargo arrives in Calcutta, or in Singapore, or in Alexandria, near Suez. I need it here in Liverpool. I need it here in Cardiff. I need it wherever they are, but I need it on this island. Once I get on the island, I can move it around with a train, but it's got to get here first. So, can you read it? If not, I'll read it to you. The only thing that ever really frightened me during the war was the U-boat peril. Did not take the form of flaring battles and glittering achievements. It's manifested through the reports. Churchill had to say about it. Oh, I meant to lead you into this a little bit more. Now, this table is full of squids. How many Navy over here? How many Air Force over here? Good. That's good. You guys said it twice, you got thrown out. Army, the rest of us,
West Point. Sure. Maybe.
only a handful of us ground pounders here today. Am I the only Marine in the room, right?
Yeah.
The rest of you just want to be Marines. Okay, so if you're in the Air Force and the Navy, then this is going to come natural to you. If you're Sam, if you know what a great circle route is, it's a straight line where? Yeah, where? Are you reading my chart? It's okay if you are. All right. The straight line from New York to Londonderry, which is at the top of the Irish Sea there, is, as it says here, 2,700 nautical miles. That's the straight line, and it goes from there over all this land and go right straight to there. Now, the better port to get to would be Liverpool, but the Germans thought I had objections to go to Liverpool. So it made it a little bit harder. Plus, it's longer. And we're gonna look at what Derlitz was thinking about. I really should have rebooted this because the clock now says I've been talking for 2
Yeah.
hours. You rev yourself, Chappell. It's always good. It's always fun. Okay, so it would take 14 days for a ship, our notional cargo ship, which is carrying 10,000
yes.
gross registered tons at 8 knots to get to Londonderry, assuming they can use that straight line. Now, as we all know, ships are really slow when you're portaging them across ground. It can be done, but you need a lot of engines.
Yeah, so many.
Think of, Tracy got it, the rest of you that slow? Okay, so fortunately, we have a Department of Transportation, they call it back then. And in the Department of Transportation is the Maritime Administration, they did call it back then. And they came up with everywhere on the globe, port to port, they have a manual. When I first started doing away, it was a book, it was about that thick. And I know a lot of Navy people in here have played with it. It's distances between ports. You just look them up and it tells you how far it is to go from here to there. That's the great circle, nautical great circle route. So here we go. That's the shortest way to get there. Because you got to go around all that land, you added another 225 miles roughly to the trip. And at 8 knots, that adds a day to the trip. Okay? Those days start to add up if you're playing the logistics war. You start figuring, and I just rounded it all up so you all didn't have to do the math, about the time it takes to load or unload the ship, and how much time you have to wait around for everybody else to get ready to go in the convoy. And all of a sudden, you're talking about 16 days one way and a round trip, or 16 days
Yeah.
overhead, and a round trip runs 49 days. If you go on that dashed line, just like it is, Admiral Derlitz is going to win because he knows where you're going to be. You're going to be on the dotted line. All I got to do is put the submarines on the dotted line, and half of my problem is done. More than half of my problem is done. So we have to use tactical routing, and we have to do that anyway because I mentioned meteorology, a big important part about this. You still have to get around the storms, you get slowed down, you get sped up, so forth. So we're adding another 2 to 6 days onto the trip. All of a sudden, the trip is going to be 55, averaging 53 days to go over and back. And that means that we're delivering not 10,000 pounds that we put in there, but per month, 5940. UK needed you to get 1 million, this is minimum, 1 million tons a month onto the island. And you're counting in 6,000 ton increments. Okay, it'll take us the rest of the afternoon to do that math, okay? So, Derlitz, on the other hand, is saying, doesn't matter where I sink them, as long as I think 300,000 gross tons each month, they'll run out of ships before we run out of time to win the war. That adds up to my notional ship. I cheated. I cheated with the numbers, so I could do these in my head. If my ship is carrying 10,000 tons, then I really need to sink 30 ships a month. But that's above new ship production. We all know the story of the Liberty ship, shipped to one or more, because it started to outproduce the losses. But that wasn't for another 3 or 4 years. You could lose before you got the Liberty ship lines running. Could lose after you got them running, if the sinking went on.
Oh, Chip, how many?
Questions on this? Thoughts? Interrupt anytime. Laugh more often.
50. 50.
Okay, I'm just going to brief this stuff. 50 to 60 days. 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 50 with the who moves where and so forth. There's a book over there called Convoy Battles. I brought my book so you can take pictures of them if you manage to get interested in this topic. Okay? I'm not going to really talk about it too much. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go back one. How did the U-boats find you even if you weren't on that line?
Radar.
Come on, somebody go.
Radio emergence.
Say again.
Radar. Okay, radar.
U-boats didn't have any radars on.
Sonar?
Okay, they got radio direction, but journalists with radio broadcast, they're over there. How did he know that? Out of the mouths of babes. Are you 13? 14? 14. Okay, he said, oh, we're trying to regulate their radio transmissions. He's going to do that, and then he's going to put his wolf pack, 6 to 9, eventually up to 27 U-boats at a whack, across this line. He's going to do it where? Anybody? Come on, Air Force guys, where is he going to do that? Outside of aircraft range. Because airplanes are very bad juju for submarines. So right about there, can't fly from here or gander. No time on station, no time to look for submarines. Right about there is going to be a line. And am I going to go this way or this way? There's an edge to that, or I start to lose days. And losing days means pushing the tonnage delivery back. The whole thing became a game of numbers and math. Once somebody on that screening line detected a convoy, then that ship and that U-boat would say, I'm taking up positions in Finland, and I keep telling you where they are. Everybody else vectors in.
Mind your wife. No.
Now, Navy guys will tell you it's really hard to, if you know where you are and you know where the bad guy is and you know what speed the bad guy is going, it's really hard to make an interception. They're lying to you. They got this piece of paper, it's called a maneuvering board. They take a triangle, some side rules, they go, okay, right here, this course, this speed, we'll find it. Especially since I keep getting updates. And they time it so they get there, about an hour and a half after dark. Because the U-boat, now we get to this, the U-boat wants to go in on the surface because these destroyers at the start of the war had little circles like that they could hear with the ASDIC, which was what the British call a sonar. Or more accurately, sonar is what we call an ASDIC because they got there first. Should have been named ASDIC all along, right? Come on now. All right. Now, a U-boat is not very far above the water. Okay, so he's on the surface, he doesn't have a lot of horizon. So and it's still night, he has a detection circle of his own where he's trying to get that spot the convoy at night. Easy to see him in the day because you can see the big cloud of smoke. But now, much harder to see that smoke at night. So he's got to get these subs, have got to get in close enough that they can detect these big, long merchantmen. That becomes the battle of the convoy right there. So about the sensors, it's not until 1941 that the Type 271 British radar makes it onto destroyers and escorts. That's this. Now, these ships are 1,500 meters apart. Well, actually, they're yards apart. Okay. So, 2,700 meters for that detection range. It's like fighting blindfolded out there. That's a very big ocean. Everything revolves around this beam mechanic. The boffins were called in to make it work at all. Now, here's the thing about what the boffins do. We started the war let me show you what this, let me orient you to this, because I'm going to bring this fast, because it's very much a danger if I don't. Right down that rabbit hole. What's in white are things boffins worked on. What's in black are things warfighters worked on. Got that? Except on this column, which is telling us the score. So in the first part of the war, Turles didn't have very many U-boats. He got 94,000 gross tons sunk. This is called by the Germans the first happy time, because the UK was in a position where they really couldn't see what was going on. And they got into those convoys almost as much as Turles needed them to win the Continental War. At this stage, it went down because the Allies had started making some reactions. Now, what did Sam just tell us about how they found the convoys? Anybody who was remembering, anybody who was listening?
Radio.
What was that?
Radio?
Radio. This is pronounced tough duff by the Brits. High frequency direction finding. Who's seen Greyhound with Tom Hanks? Who sees everything Tom Hanks does?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Huff duff is what they keep giving you he keeps getting the report about where the submarines are coming from because he's hearing them on the radio. All right. Now they elaborate that in the movie with the very, very bogus talking to the Germans on the radio. I don't think that ever happened. Okay, it might have happened once or twice, but it's certainly didn't have a conversation. Okay. So Huff Duff though is introduced, and that's one of the things that the Boffins got done here that knocked the loss rate down. Okay. The other hand, the Germans got better submarines. Okay. Lot C to the submarine that was the top of the heap. The best submarine at the time is done. What's Beatins? Anybody knows that name? Tom, not you? Ben? Okay, that's the SIGINT, the signal intelligence apparatus of the German Navy. Okay, they had ground stations. It was their version of the cryptology. Most of it was traffic analysis. For those in the business, traffic analysis, you don't need to know what's in the message. You just have to know a message was sent. From whom to everyone, or from whom to, because you usually get a reply back if it's to somebody specifically, right? So you make an analysis out of that. That's how they were locating the convoys and led to that. He did works all through the war. But now we can start interpreting some of it on our own. At the end of this, you get Alan Turing coming in, and he's finally, at the end of 2 years of war, he's got Enigma broken. So now he's reading the codes, but not all the codes, and usually not in enough time, because it's still taking him a long time to break a given code. Right? I'm going way too deep. Now, U.S. enters the war in the next 6 months. Boom. We're not going to get to that 300,000. We make up for earlier losses in terms of speed. That's because the United States is sucking up all the torpedoes. Now, the problem with that for Germans was, oh yeah, now I'm making a lot more, but now I got a lot more ships to sink too, that I have to sink to win the tonnage war. He really had to sink those all in the first place. He just didn't count them when he was between wars to his 30,000. The U.S. is sending airplanes like crazy to the Pacific, and the Air Force, Army Air Corps, is not willing to put those airplanes on submarine patrol. So we got guys off the coast of the U.S. who could stay there longer because they're getting at sea refueling. And all of a sudden, we see those go up. Eventually, Admiral King figures out this is unsustainable. and he starts doing some things. The first thing he does is start convoying along the coast. I'm going to come back to that. I guess I'll come back to the other things. Okay. By this time, the Germans are dealing with the radar, and so they come up with a radar warning detection. They break the UK codes, which the UK doesn't figure out until after the war. And the Germans figured out maybe we ought to add another rotor to the Enigma machine just in case they're breaking our codes. They don't believe their codes are broken, but better safe than sorry. And all of a sudden, we're no longer reading it. U-boats. This is the Western Approaches Task Unit. And there's a book over there that I recommend. It's very entertaining about how Navy rents, women in the Royal Navy, helped develop the tactics to win this. It's called The Game of 10. It's going to be made into a movie. It's too good of a story not to. About how the women helped develop the tactics for winning at the convoy level. That's how it's formed. When the depth charges are used, can't find the submarine for a while, at 2 hours. That's in the Greyhound movie. You know, you got to wait till you reacquire the target. You use this head hog, which is a forward throwing and quiet unless you hit the submarine weapon. And aircraft add this lay light to it, which is a four-sided light. It's tied up to the radar in the airplane. So when the airplane at night spots a U-boat on the surface, they get close, flip on the light. Now they can see the target and drop the weapon, which they couldn't do by radar bombing. There was just too much, not good enough radars in those days. So that's that. And then the change of frequency on the radar to be a much better, more accurate, small target detection. And the Germans could not detect it because it was a different frequency. And the Allies finally said, you know, we really need to get more airplanes out here. When they did that, the German losses went up. So we see big kills, and it looks like big kills until you realize this is in May. He's trying to beat off the aircraft by shooting at them, and that's not working. We increase the number of aircraft, and the losses in May are, got them over here. May sinkings were 265,000. So a little bit more than half of what's the average for that period. But more importantly, those losses were 38 ships, and the U-boats, we got to 41. First time in the war that more U-boats went down than cargo ships in these battles. Durnan says, enough of this. He's still thinking he can kill them anywhere. He pulls them out of the North Atlantic. And the rest becomes history. From June 43 to 45, losses are like this, 8 ships, roughly a month. And we're killing many, many more. And by this point, Admiral King has gotten his nose back out of the Pacific and said, yeah, we're going to make a new fleet over here. And it's called the Fleet with those ships. It's strictly crypto, psyops, operations analysis. What you saw happen was one of the hardest nosed admirals in the U.S. Navy started to fight the Germans with knowledge, vice, hardware. That's what this whole pitch is about. The Boffins coming up with technology, hardware, makes a difference. But it's when we start moving that stuff and adding exploitation of knowledge that we start seeing this battle actually turn. Okay, again, the wrong button. All right, so the book over there doesn't have anything to do with the convoy battle on the surface of it. It was written by these two socialists, very lefty. Tom doesn't like them at all. He says, I can't believe you brought that book here. Well, Tom doesn't know everything about this, so let's see. But he says after his review. They hypothesize in their book, Future Shock, that the race, the humans, have gone through 3 ages. Now, they wrote that in the late 60s, early 70s. Our first age was the agricultural age, followed by the industrial age. And when they wrote this, they say, we're approaching the post-industrial age. That's what they call it. Okay? Now, what this means is that, as you read into the book, is that over 50% of the humans on the planet were involved in creating food.
Yeah.
So 50% or more to feed everybody. They had to grow food, drive the cows home at night with the switches like Sam does still today. If you live on a ranch in Africa. He doesn't. In the industrial age, over 50% of the people are doing industrial age things. They're building stuff, they're selling stuff, they're making infrastructure. Okay? And in the post-industrial age, they say people are going to move into the service industry. And these guys were called nuts. Okay, nuts, that's not going to happen. You can't live, you can't have an economy that works on the service industry.
That's interesting.
I'm sorry, that's true. Okay,
Oh, good.
I don't know what you guys are thinking.
Yeah.
All right. We also see how the energy flows. This is more interesting to me. In the agricultural age, especially back when, it's all muscle. First off, for a long time, several thousand years, it's human muscle and human muscle alone. Finally, we're able to domesticate the animals. Eventually, even in ancient times, figure out how to use wind to a lesser extent, but originally water. I call that all fluid mechanics. Doesn't matter if the wind's unless we run out of water, it's still fluid. All right? We can get energy out of it that way. The industrial age starts when we figure out how to make energy from things that we can burn. And we have that going, even though electricity is discovered somewhere down in here, it's up until, not until here, we're really using it in production to make our lives better. We don't know what's next. Tom and some others in here, like Lou, we're going to say, what do you mean we don't know? We got nuclear reactors. I'm sorry. Nuclear reactors make this. Then they take the steam to make this. The same as ground reactors. Oil-fired reactors, coal-fired reactors. They just burn something different. Very efficiently burn it. Okay, big fan, but it's not new energy. Solar energy is still this. I don't know what's coming. If you figure it out, invest in it. So those become the means of production. And authors make much about the means of production. And we see the means of production changing as we go on in this. I'm not going to go through that because I'm way over briefing this. The means of production also becomes the means of creating wealth. It is a lot easier to measure it once we start putting dollars and cents beside it. Okay, so that's the main reason we're going to think about it that way. And reason Alan and Heidi thought about it that way. Now, lots of people read this book. It was very influential. One of them, Army guys, raise your hands, get ready. Who's heard of General Don Story? Just the Army guys? Nobody else? Joey says he's heard. Don Story, 4-star general, Vietnam hero, etc. In the 70s, is part of it. I don't hear him anymore. I'm sorry, you can finish. Don Story is head of training and doctrine command. And it's his job to look into the future. So he finishes doing that up, and then he goes into retirement, like everybody in this room, and says, I'm still in the business. I might be retired, but I'm still in the business, and I'm going to consult. And he's going to do those things. He goes and he meets up with Alvin and Heidi, and they're polite. You know, we got these leftists, we got this general. Talk. They talk. They keep finding grounds for commonality. And eventually, reading war and anti-war, they become true believers in Don's story. Who's trying to figure out what war is going to look like in the future. And between the two of them, that means these things, they look over the timeline of history and they say, that's the means of production or the way that you conduct war. Back here, in Megiddo, the first documented battle ever, 1500 BC, give or take a year or two on distance. They did reconnaissance, they had strategy, they could write, because that we know about the war. But how did they kill each other? Muscle power from humans and a pawn store. Okay, and they did that for a long time. This timeline's really compressed, right? Get to the 100 Years' War, we're still doing that. Most people are still growing food. Animals are involved in getting this, but it's all muscle power. But by the time we get to the 7 Years' War, which is about 1750, for those who don't know that stuff off the top of their head. You know, machines are being used as well. Yada, yada, yada. We got World War I and II. Then 1990 comes, and we see the Great Desert Storm, Desert Shield, Desert Storm. It's called the end of this, right? And what are we seeing down here? Airline, broadcast media, the importance of Fifth Avenue, the importance of getting information to people. And as we go on beyond that, they're seeing computer, satellites, position, navigation, and timing. Right? How many people used their GPS to find the place to land? Right? To plan their traffic route. All right, so now we're going to take a look at this. Future. Close out this pitch. How long have I been? 40 minutes. We're halfway through. Means of production are what drives everything. World War II was the ultimate production. The countries just figured out who was going to outproduce who, and they threw their equipment at each other until, like a game of Risk, you wore them out. Right? 1-for-1 losses, fundamentally, look through the World War. But World War II was also where they started the industrialization of science. Okay? The production means, remember way back when I had the first Boffin slide, the thing I said right up front was the production. It's the first place you see information being used to improve production lines, to improve the flow of material to production lines. The Brits had a politician that they put in charge of science that worked directly for Churchill, that put in charge of science. Here, go handle all that science stuff. Keep me informed. Not a bad guy, but no man over near Bush either. Who's in the U.S. had. Maybe besides Tom, know this guy by name. And Mary. Near as I can tell, and I did some looking, not related to the period of, not one or the other, President Bush's. Okay, Yale man. Still. All right, Vannevar Bush on our side, much better suited to this particular role. Lindemann gets a guy named Blackett, who literally invents operations analysis. his biography is over there. You can take a picture of him. I don't know if in this topic I can use technical marine terms. You think, ladies? Can I speak my mind?
Yeah, no.
Guy's a flaming asshole. Okay? He's just hard to get along with. Okay? But he's brilliant. On the US side, and it took longer to get him, time is not on this chart as a dimension. Bush ends up with a guy named Philip Morris, not the tobacco company, spelled different. Phil Morris, and his book's over, well, is at home, but he writes a book on operations analysis. He becomes the operations analysis analyst of the US. So originally, Blackett works for the RAF. In the Royal Navy, Churchill, and I should have probably done this, I'm gonna go back to that one. Churchill gets him moved over to supporting the U-boat war. He's still in the RAF, but he's mainly working on coastal command. But he does what he wants. So he's also working with the destroyers and so forth. And he's leading teams of boffins to handle the problems that they come up with a ley line, they come up with a centimeter radar, and more importantly, they come up with a way to talk to warfighters about how to use these things. Same thing for Morris, the Anti-Submarine Warfare Operations Research Group. They start working for King. Eventually, that spawns, King takes them and says, I'm going to build everything around these guys, and puts them into 10th Fleet. After the war, they become the Center for Naval Analysis. Some people are going to remember those names. The Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab. These companies are still in the war business, still supporting what's going forward. Now, Bush, job titles and so forth, and organizations change, but there's a direct lineage between Bush to our recent appointee of Neil Michaels by President Trump to be Undersecretary of State for R&D. Straight line heritage. Lindemans got a counterpart in the United Kingdom, Paul Hollingsworth, at the Directorate for Strategy, Tactics, and that's not logistics. Science, technology. Okay, so after the war, Bush led all of these boffins. He writes an article. Excuse me. Turns out spam, but it might have been that she must be obeyed. So, okay, so Bush writes this article. Much like the top floors, gets everybody thinking, and look at him, he's got this camera lens stuck on his head, and he writes this ridiculous stuff. Just look at what he's saying here. It's absurd. Consider a future device for individuals. There's a mechanized private file library. He's named, and he's going to call it MEMEX. And by the way, he went ahead and copyrighted that. Okay? And the coin that random, that's the MEMEX, was an individual store all of his books, all of his records, conduct his communications, and be mechanized so he could consult it with exceeding speed. How in the world is that freaking possible? I ask you, can anybody do something like that? What's wrong? Put that down. Can anybody do anything like that? Oh, this is why counting the shows means the introduction in the information age. We're likely to just think really simplistically about this, because brains are very busy things. Computers and communications, yeah, it's all about that. And the toppers go into each one of these things. I'm gonna only bring two, and you're gonna pick up. Who wants to hear what? Somebody, move this along. Yeah, shout out a number.
Scaling 7.
Scaling,
Scale, number 6.
well, that's a bad one to pick.
Pick seven.
Large scale is how we thought it World War II. Big numbers, lots of stuff going on, right? Thing goes down the production line, large scale. We're building those B-24s are coming out 1 a minute, right? 1 a minute. Who's been over to the bomber plant, now the fighter plant in Fort Worth, Air Force Plant 1?
Yeah, remember me.
Okay, well, I got 3 Lockheed guys who I already knew, and you have been over there, right?
Visiting.
Visiting, right?
Okay.
Getting a tour over there might be fun sometime. Just saying, Mr. President. You know what I'm saying? Jim's looking at you like, you got 2 minutes. Okay, when a plane goes down the production line over in Fort Worth,
Yeah.
it's no longer coming out, well, first off, it's no longer coming out because we can't pay for an airplane that
Sure.
come out every 60 seconds. But it's not going down looking like the one in front of it or looking like the one behind it. Every one that goes down that line has a tag on it, and the parts come in with tags on it, says this goes on this tail number, and it's gonna go to Turkey, it's gonna go to India, it's gonna go to the National Guard. The next one's gonna be National Guard. Next one's going to the National Guard, but it needs these features. It needs this feature. So customization is what we see across the means of production nowadays and now take for granted. Right? That's scale. One more.
Seven, organization.
Organizations have to change to accommodate the rest of these things. Let me see what I put in my notes so I don't forget anything specific. Okay, who's been in business recently, like in the last 10 years? Does the org chart match what's going on?
Pretty
Never.
unitized, because it's
Never.
Okay, your business is kind of unitized. Anybody have an org chart that actually integrates and, oh, there you are. Thought that show was empty. You work for Linux. Does the org chart match what actually happens? What's happening?
what's happening.
Yeah. How do you get a project out?
Oh,
You're a project manager. Come on.
I think the cord's also here.
Who said I was going to pick on you? We didn't.
yeah. It's cross-functional, and you have to, you fill in the gaps where the gaps exist.
Thank you.
You customizing your workforce to the job? Am I putting words in your mouth? Because I'm talking to employees.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Luke.
Yeah, I buy the piece of talent that I need for a particular thing.
Yeah,
I don't buy employees
yeah,
for long-term contracts.
right.
If I need this done for the next 3 months, that's what I go get.
Change your organization.
And I may never see that person again.
Right. So he's at the edge where we're going to go. Eric's still in the middle of getting pieces to fit together as he needs to in his organization. So we see Kaizen events, we see work teams, ad hoc work teams. Okay, at the larger level.
Yeah.
We see on the very next one, systems integration, that works in having the parts, the activities, and the flows of material. Adding, that used to be production. Now we're adding specific kinds of energy, people, and more especially knowledge to get each item going down the stream. Okay? The number of people involved in putting part A into slot B goes down. The amount of knowledge that's needed to go and build this F-16 for India and this next one for Israel and this next one for the New York National Guard is different. those come with different parts. They come with different knowledge pieces. Okay? And what this means to us in the future is what I want everyone here to be thinking about. I mean, that's the goal of my thesis, if you will, is that as the knowledge comes in, what kinds of things are we going to change to fit? Because this old World War II thing where I had Vandermeer and Lindemann up here is not going to continue to work. It's dinosaur. Having an Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Development makes it a roadblock to production, not speed. Can anyone say SpaceX besides Tom? Compare SpaceX to NASA. Okay, NASA has its role. I'm not saying do away with NASA, but it's a different role, and it has been modified to do just that role, while mass producing is another. And speaking of SpaceX, we're getting close to the end.
Yeah, okay. Good.
Let's talk about Starlink as an example of what I'm talking about. Who knows or has heard of Starlink?
Yeah.
Boy, my God.
Oh, boy.
You too, Joe. Okay, so basically Starlink is this, right? It's a satellite that talks to a ground station. Okay, we missed out on the wisecrack. I don't know what it was, but they're both laughing, so we all get cheated. Okay, so the ground link and the satellite are talking. Now this ground link talks to everything that's on the Wi-Fi in that house. Right? Everything. Talks to the computer, laptop, talks to the phones, right? Talks to the TV. It talks to the refrigerator.
Yeah, that's going.
Some houses anyway. Right? It talks to the hair dryer. Even to Alex's house. It talks to the hair dryer. Okay? And that means that the hair dryer can talk to the satellite.
Oh.
It can. Does it?
No.
Actually, yeah, it only can. Sometimes it does. Okay? If you're hooked up that way, that's how your internet's hooked up. That's how it talks to it. What does that mean? Well, the first thing it means is you need more than one satellite. Okay?
Okay.
How many satellites has NASA put up? We don't know. But it's like a couple 100,000 maybe. Probably less. The constellation behind you was no kidding, this is where they are this instant picture taken about a year ago. And it has 8,475 satellites in it. That's how many white dots there are on here. And if you want to know how high Earth or low Earth orbit is, you can see it right here.
22,000 miles.
That's geosynchronous. This is low orbit. These things are continually moving in these orbits. And that's why we see it denser here, because we've got this orbit only cuts these lines of latitude. This orbit cuts those, and we can continue. So not a lot of users up here, not a lot of people paying for Starlink up here. They don't get so many satellites. They don't need as many satellites. Down here, we need more, especially in Europe. So they have more. Okay? Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
The final constellation for Starlink is expected to be 42,000 satellites. That's a lot of man. But got a lot of hair dryers I want to talk. Okay, SpaceX is not the only company doing this, by the way. You're doing it for money. Okay. According to Elon Musk, the only reason he made Starlink was to pay for his trip to Mars. He says, who's going to pay? He said, well, I'm going to charge everybody out here. What is it here? I got it right here. $80 a month. You get your satellite.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Upfront cost, a little under 500. You can get it cheaper. Okay. They got a deal today. Go home tonight, get on Starlink, and you can get it for, I didn't put it down here, but about $250. Not half price.
Was, yeah, this, yeah.
So, DOD says, don't tell NASA, but we could use some of this action. Bonnie's waving at me. This is the next to last slide.
Okay, all right.
We could use some of this action.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so they have a deal with them where they buy it in bulk, and it's called Star Shield. And part of Star Shield has been seconded to another country,
Ukraine. Yeah.
the Ukraine. Now, Elon Musk says you can't use it for offensive operations because I'm afraid the Russians will set off a nuke.
Oh, yeah.
That's Elon's satellite. I guess he gets to take his ball and play where he wants to play. I'm not afraid of the Russians setting off a nuke.
Oh, so, blah, 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 blah.
I don't want to be there when it happens, though. So the Ukraine war, Ukraine forces are using it daily for these things. And next time somebody asks you as a military expert, and I know we're all asked from time to time, how is it that, I'm not being facetious, how is it the Ukrainians are holding up to the Russians? The Russians are massive. Don't believe me? Ask Jim to tell us the joke about, has the viewer seen this map? Okay? They're massive. How is that little bitty country hanging in there? Knowledge. Don's story and Alvin codified. They didn't do it because Don and Alvin talked, no misunderstanding. But they did see what was going to happen, and that's why we have a pitch today when we talk about it.
Yeah.
What they're doing to get this stuff to roll. All right, I've already been told to shut up and sit down, Chairman.
Yeah.
So here's the two. This would be the takeaway chart. Thesis one is World War II is the epitome of industrial age war. We're never going to see that again. Hopefully, we'll never see that again, right?
Yes, ma'am.
It provided the medium in a cultural sense, and I don't mean culture, I mean like where you put germs in your grow, that kind of medium. Provided the medium for the employment, organized employment of scientific minds. And they synergistically acted, and not with intent, but in fact, kicked off the industrial age, the information age. The methods that were used in World War II have gotten us this far into the information age, but you've already heard me say, it's not going to be enough for the future. So we got to figure out what we're going to do. The next decade will be interesting. We'll continue to see changes in how knowledge is deployed synergistically. When we see changes, we see investment opportunities for ourselves. Right? So, I'm going to ask questions if there are any. I have beaten this horse completely into death. Or discussions. And one of the things I want you to think about is, what does that really mean? What's my take home? Okay. What got anything? Naomi, give me a question. Yes, sir.
You didn't really picking up the discussion, but the major concern today in warfighting is the availability of functioning in terms of missiles, especially seaborne missiles. If we were preparing for a war with China, SNSI was we have like 2 weeks supply. So how are we taking the thesis, what you're saying here, and projecting requirements that could be needed tomorrow?
Okay, did everybody hear the question?
Yeah.
Okay, so the question is, I'm sorry, Jim points out, no stone cold fact, not a comfortable one, that it's going to be easy to run out of missiles. If there's a big war, we're gonna run out of missiles because we don't have that many and we make them pretty slow. They take a while to make, right? So what do we do about it?
Okay, go ahead.
How does what I just said make a difference? How can that make a difference to the production and industrial age concept of missiles? You got anything? Is that Paul? Pete? Got anything? Because you've been paying close attention, I appreciate
No,
it.
I mean, using the information age, tools that we have, you should have a plan in place for ramp up capability. with-
Okay, so we can increase production,
Logistics and preposition,
try to do that.
increase production, increase,
Yeah.
speed up the delivery time,
Okay, get them from the factory to the shooter,
right? Prioritize where you want those to go.
sir.
But make them more lethal and less likely to be intercepted by the
Not
other
gonna
side.
tell you, we can redesign and redo and
Yeah.
rebuild and update missiles. But you, I'm gonna put words in your mouth, you tell me if you disagree with what you're trying, certainly what I'm saying. Use the missiles with more intelligence
Right.
in order to make them go further. Use them more efficiently. Is that okay?
No.
Is that okay? Does that satisfy part of your question? They're gonna increase production rates, and we're gonna use the ones we got more economically.
It's like they said with the U-boats, how to use the U-boats to where you can get the most effect out of them and the least loss of them.
Right. Okay? Anything else? No, you don't have anything, Joe, I know. Okay? All right.
No thanks.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Talk longer.
Yeah.
But a week or so on with Tom.
Thank you very much. It's
That's
a
not a
pleasure.
rodeo. Hope to see everybody at the Christmas party.
Yes,
Be safe.
Thank you.
I'll be here all afternoon.